What's up everybody? We're back at it again. We got an amazing video, cool process, and you're not gonna believe what we just coated over. So, a few things to go over. I'm getting set up to prep this tile. Obviously, if you just sand and scuff it up with like a palm sander, even if you use like 40 grit sandpaper, you're never gonna scuff it up enough to get it a porous profile to where stuff's gonna wanna soak in and lock into the tile. And so that's where the concrete grinder comes into play. Cup wheel, angle grinder, and then we have a dust shroud on it. And this is gonna hook right up to the vacuum. That's gonna minimize a lot of the dust. And you can get this whole setup, Home Depot, Lowe's, Harbor Freight even has some of the dust shrouds and stuff. And then the next thing that we gotta address is the unevenness of the tile. See how this is sticking out past, big old lip there? If I was to just try to coat epoxy over this, this is gonna look horrible. And so we gotta grind this smooth. And when I'm doing the top, I'm gonna be grinding any high spots, any peaks, any unlevel spots of the tile. This grinder is gonna take it down and make it perfectly even. And so that's kind of the process for prepping tile. It is obviously more work than going over Formica or even wood tops. But again, it's a lot easier than ripping all this tile off, getting rid of all the thin set, then probably most likely you have to resheet it. Now you definitely have to redo the backsplash. And so kind of just do it job by job, right? Maybe sometimes it would be easier to just rebuild the top. But again, that just depends. We just want to show you the process on how to go over tile, how to prep it right to where you're not gonna have a callback of stuff chipping off or not sticking to the tile. And so I'll show you what I mean by getting a porous surface for our coatings to lock into. So I'll take a little water. I'll just pour it right here. Just beads up, doesn't soak in at all, right? Nothing's gonna wanna stick to that. And then I take a little here. It's gonna darken up immediately. It's gonna soak right in. See how it just darkens up, totally changes the color. And that's gonna wind up just soaking in to the tile now. Now it's a porous surface. That's gonna give us that amazing bond between the coating and the tile. And this is why we grind, right? Still hasn't changed color over here, just sitting on there. This is soaking in, pretty cool stuff. So now we got the smaller angle grinder, smaller cup wheel. I'm gonna fine tune these low spots, and I'm also gonna hit the face. All right, so that's pretty much prepping to get a porous profile, right? Corners are rounded, there's no high spots. I hit the low spots, right? Everything's scuffed up, really, really porous. So now we're gonna vacuum this, vacuum up the floor, and this is basically ready to Bondo, right? We need to Bondo any gaps. We need to get this whole face completely smooth, and then we're gonna show you the process on how to get this perfectly flat prior to doing our decorative epoxy coat. And so that'll kind of be the next steps, but this is the most efficient, fastest way, best way to prep tile. Cool thing about this, same thing for floors, right? Like if we were coating this floor, we would take our big grinder, we would scuff it all up, and then we would do the exact same process that we're gonna do on this top as we would on the floor. So if you guys are doing a tile bathroom floor, same exact process, right? We already did that first one, went awesome. We're gonna do the exact same process. Lighting's kind of crappy in here, so we'll get as much shots as we can. But again, same exact process. I'm gonna hit it with the big one, have it hooked up to the vacuum, go around with the smaller one, hit my corners, my edges, any low spots this guy didn't get, and then we'll fine tune the corners and stuff with that metal flapper disc. All right, so the next step on this, we want to clean it really well, right? Even though we vacuumed it, there's still going to be some dust on it. And so biggest thing is wiping it down multiple times, getting it as clean as we can. That way the Bondo, when we Bondo these faces, right, that Bondo is going to soak in and want to stick to that tile. If it's not clean, there's a layer of dust. It's obviously not going to stick and soak in as well. Now that they're clean, we're going to let them dry out for a little bit, finish wiping down the other ones, and then we'll go into, we're gonna mix a Bondo. And again, we're only Bondoing these faces, right? Any seams and gaps in the faces. This chip right here, we'll fill that. We're gonna flood coat the tops. So we don't have to worry about all these seams. And flood coating the top of tile is the way to go, right? It's gonna make it perfectly level. If we spent the time and Bondoed all these grout lines, you're never gonna get it perfectly flat and flush. So that's why we like to flood coat the top. What we'll do is we'll put weather stripping on the edge, flood coat it. Once that starts to set up, we'll pull that, we'll let that resin flow over the face, and then the next day when we come in, we got a perfectly flat top, flat face, ready to coat. Next step, sand the Bondo, right? We want to get everything flush, and I always like to not just go by eyesight, but go by feel. So after I sand a spot out, you'll see me run my hand across it, make sure I don't feel any ribs, raised spots, any chunks. We want it nice and smooth. Again, the face is the most critical spot, so that's why we spend so much time on the faces, right? The tops, resin goes on a lot thicker there. So I'm gonna be using 80 grit sandpaper. You can use 40 grit, whatever you want. Hooked up to a vacuum. Again, we like to minimize dust, and this will not take too long. All right, so I know this isn't ideal lighting or footage, but I'm gonna just show you if you wanted to Bondo all your tile grout lines. So those other two bathrooms, we're gonna flood coat just because it's easier, nicer, always looks better. But you can spend the time and do what I'm doing in here and Bondo all your grout lines. It's always good to leave it a little bit higher, and then when we come back, we can grind them flush. These are ready. Again, make sure you run your hands across it. You'll feel it before you see it. Any spots that need sanded still. And so the next step in this process is to tape our backsplash, weather strip our edges around the sinks, create that dam, and then we're gonna apply the resin onto it, let that set up for 20, 30 minutes, pull the weather stripping on the edge, that way it can flow over and coat the face. And that's gonna allow it to fill in all the grout lines, all the low spots, right? But the biggest thing is make sure you fill any grout lines that are going to the face, right? So all these are filled, every single one of these. If you don't do that, you're gonna have, the resin's gonna wanna trickle down that, and you're gonna have a low spot right here that you need to address later on. All right, so now we're gonna dump the epoxy on it. We took our milk chocolate pigment, added it to it because when we do the design, the decorative part of the counter, there's gonna be milk chocolate in it, so might as well pigment it now, right? Help hide the color of the tile, the grout lines. Can you do it with clear? Absolutely. Then you can prime it to get a colored canvas, right? So say you were doing white, you could do clear, and then you can prime it white. That way your whole counter is white. And then when you go and do your epoxy, you don't have any spots where you can potentially see through whatever color you're doing. And so again, just a simple way to add some more pigment to get some more hide out of this coat. So we're just gonna mist this denatured alcohol, get rid of a lot of these bubbles. Boom. If it just fills back in immediately, you'll wanna wait a little longer. We could potentially wait a little longer, but we're just gonna pull it right now. All right, so we are on the next day, right? So I'm gonna go over all the steps we're gonna do today, right before we do our decorative coat, right? A few things we gotta still do, but you can see how awesome these turned out, right? You can't even tell they're tile. There is some few faint ghost lines of the grout, right? But after this next coat, you're not gonna see them. And so what I did, we got here this morning, I pulled the tape. We always like to re-tape just to make sure that our tape's not getting locked in, right? And you can see our tape line up here still above the epoxy, which we want. So we're gonna tape maybe a little bit higher on this next one. Again, we always wanna tape high so when the resin's coated, it doesn't lock that tape in and then you have to cut it out with the razor blade. Next thing we're gonna do is cut the weather stripping out, and then we're gonna have to do 2 layers of weather stripping because again, we're doing another thick coat. And so we need to do 2 layers of weather stripping, same exact spot. So this one we gotta cut out still. Right, you can pull it out, but it's kind of a pain, just wants to tear. We'll redo the weather stripping. Trey's gonna come in here, sand the bottom, any drips with the palm sander, any imperfections in the face, he'll scuff those up. And it's nice because if there's any imperfections in it right now, or maybe there was a gap or a seam you missed, you can fill that with Bondo, it'll dry quick, or you can even do fast setting sheetrock mud, because again, we're doing another coat over this, so it's gonna lock everything in. And then the last thing we gotta do, plastic off the floor. Once that's all done, retape our backsplash, and then we're gonna dam up the faces, and then this thing's ready to be coated. And so this is what we're gonna do on all the counters that had the tile. And then we're filming another project. I'll have James follow me out here. We're filming another project right now too, separate video. So you'll definitely wanna check this video out. Here's the other, before we get out there, here's the other one. It's cool, just brown, looks really cool. And so we'll do the same process on that one that I just talked about. Again, we got this guy here. This is the one that we filled the grout lines with Bondo, right? We didn't flood this. We still rolled epoxy on it, a thin coat, just to seal up and soak into the tile so it's permanently welded to the tile. But again, the other option on going over tile is just filling all your grout lines with Bondo, sanding them smooth, and then coating over them. So we'll be doing this one as well. And this is the other project, going over granite. Very extensive process that we filmed here for you guys on this video. Again, this is a separate video, but you'll definitely want to check it out. Grinded it, scuffed it up really good, got rid of all the polished stone, all the sealer that was on there, did a skim, real thin coat, seal coat of epoxy, and permanently lock itself into that granite, so less prone to chipping, having issues in the future. But again, separate video, but you'll definitely want to check it out. Really, really cool process for going over granite and having that stuff last for years. All right, so we're on the final stages of getting ready to pour, getting everything ready. Again, we got 2 rows of weather stripping now, right? Because we already poured a thick coat. And so we'll jump into the other smaller bathroom. He's already got that ready. And this is basically what it should look like, right? Backsplash taped again, 2 rows, painter's tape, basically half on the counter, half above it. That's basically our dam. Pressed down, sealed really tight. So this is ready to coat. And then he's finishing that. And so we'll get to mixing, and then we'll jump into pouring it out. All right, so again, 2 projects. Got the kitchen all poured out. We want to move quickly. Still got to blend the kitchen, get the product dumped out here, come back, blend this stuff. So we're gonna just be pouring out, to get this design, pouring out lines of each color all throughout it. And you'll notice when we're pouring, like I'm gonna pour one here, and then when Alex comes with his color, he's not gonna pour it right next to mine. He's gonna leave a little gap in between. The reason we do that is because this resin is gonna level out, right? We're pouring pretty thick beads. Pretty tight quarters, guys. We're doing our best to get you some good shots. So all I'm doing is checking the thickness. You can see how thick that is, right? So I think we're good here. I think we're good on that one. So this is what it looks like, right? After we dump out all the beads, 2 different colors, and then Alex is just gonna run his fingers through it, and then it'll just start blending those 2 colors in and make it look more natural than just pouring beads out. So we're gonna let this evaporate, right? We just sprayed it, and then we're gonna mist it with isopropyl mixed with our liquid diamond metallics, add the sparkle, and then if there's any bubbles or anything left, we're gonna mist it with denatured alcohol, and that's kind of the process. So we never wanna flood the surface, right? If we flood it, it's gonna muddy out the veins and kind of doesn't make them look as natural. And so we'd like to do it light, let it evaporate out, and then hit it again if we have to hit it again. All right, so we let that isopropyl evaporate. Now we're gonna spray the liquid diamonds to add some sparkle to it. Again, we don't wanna flood the surface, and then James can probably get you to see those liquid diamonds kind of just popping at different angles. All right, so it's been 3 days, guys. It's always good to let the counters sit before you put the sinks in. They just put them in today, so we came back after that to show you guys the footage. These turned out phenomenal. Again, very extensive process for going over tile. We showed you 2 different ways on this project: flood coating over the tile, and then bondoing all your grout lines, sanding those on the little laundry counter. I know the footage ain't the best, it's kind of dark in there, but yeah, these turned out phenomenal. You'd never know that this was over tile, right? You don't see any grout lines, any low spots. These turned out perfect. And so that's kind of the process. We like to show you the most extensive way for people that are doing this for a living. We recommend doing this process or doing the Bondo to fill the grout lines, or flooding it like we did in here, just for longevity, right? These are gonna last as long as the countertops. If you drop something, they're not gonna chip, because again, we locked the epoxy soaked into the tile because we grinded it to make it porous. And so now we have a permanent coating on these counters where we can have peace of mind when we leave the job, knowing, hey, these are gonna last as long as this countertop does without any issues or defects. So James will jump in, get final footage. If you haven't watched the granite prep video, make sure you watch that, because that's an awesome video as well. We did both those in the same house, but again, separate video. Check that thing out, because we went very, very in-depth on that video as well. So if you ever go over granite, we have an awesome video for that as well. So see you on the next one.